There, a cold man. Yes, we heard from Gabe Davis, now a former Jaguar. Eric Armstead, maybe missing in action last year at times, Tony. And Ronald Darby right there in the open.
I think a more cynical person than me, I'm not cynical enough for this,
okay,
right?
but
I think a more cynical person than me would think that Dylan's trying to send a message to everyone that you're getting too hyped about this offseason in light of what happened last offseason.
Maybe, or we're not getting hyped enough because we've got a brand new set of eyes that are correcting the mistakes of the past. By the way, good morning, Demetrius Harvey. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing all right.
When Eric Armstead said I have 5 or 6 more good seasons left in me, does that mean Jag fans can look forward to 5 or 6 more good seasons? Because we haven't gotten one of those used up yet, right? We still got 5 or 6 left in the tank,
hey,
right?
man, I mean, that's what he said. So
that's what he said.
It does make sense. You know, I feel like last year you can kind of cast that aside for Eric. You know, I feel like it's not too fair, but
I understand.
At the same time,
we kid. It's gallows humor.
Whose call was it? Do we know yet? Whose call? What? Why was he playing where he was playing?
I feel like, and this is not something that I'm saying is actually what happened. I feel as though Ryan Nielsen, because he also made guys like Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines-Allen gain some weight, it makes sense that he would want a bigger end, like Eric Armstead, you know, in his mind to play end. So to me, that's what they had envisioned for him.
Did you envision when we worked out that today would work for you to come in that the first question from Tony would be, so why didn't Eric Armstead play inside last year? Like, my goodness, man, we were rolling back the clock. So, yes, Gabe Davis was released this morning by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Demetrius, this is an indictment, obviously, of what they think he can do for this football team or bring to the locker room because, you know, Tony and I have talked about it. We talked about it before the show this morning. When Liam Cohen was asked, who are your other weapons? He went to Parker Washington and De'Ami Brown and, you know, after Brian Thomas Jr. and obviously now Travis Hunter in the mix. Never mentioned the name Gabe Davis, and some suggested, well, you know, it's just first names that popped into his mind. I think these guys are pretty smart, this new crew, and pretty intentional with what they say.
And I think it is telling for guys like Liam. I mean, these guys are obsessive. They know every player on the roster. They look at them every single day. The fact that he did not mention Gabe, the fact that he wasn't even front of mind, even if for a second you can say, okay, maybe he just forgot. The fact that he would forget was telling to me, and so that's why, you know, we started talking about maybe Gabe Davis doesn't fit in this offense. Maybe there's something that they're thinking about. Maybe he's still hurt, which I do know that he's not completely recovered from that knee surgery yet. You know, he had just had it. I think it was in November or December. So, you know, there are mitigating factors against this, and I do feel like, you know, now that they have released him, it sort of makes sense, you know, why they talk about De'Ami Brown, why they talk about Brenton Strange a lot more. You know, they don't necessarily think that they need this guy to sort of complete their wide receiver group.
And I do think, too, you know, they are new. Like, it's a new GM and a new head coach, at least new in the positions that they're in. They've never been involved in this part of the process before, but they've been in the process somehow, you know, in all these different times, different areas. And I see Gabe Davis being released, and I think back, and this quote has been bouncing around in my head since Liam Cohen said it, right? At the draft press conference, the luncheon, when he was asked about what he's learned so far in the process and that kind of thing, the first thing he said when he was asked about that was special teams matter.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that was the first thing he said. And he said it almost with a smile. And now Gabe Davis is being let go. We've been talking about this for a couple weeks now.
How would he be active on game day?
Right. Like, he can't play special teams or doesn't play special teams. How is he on the roster? Like, the only way we saw for him to be on the roster was, well, I don't know if they'll bite the bullet on $15 million. Right? Like, that was the only reason he was going to be here was that, and that apparently wasn't enough.
That was something that I thought would be a reason why he would maybe last this year at least. You know, he could come in as a reserve kind of guy. Yeah, you would be overpaying for that position, but then you wouldn't lose. You know, you wouldn't necessarily lose value on that. But now that they've done it, it kind of makes sense. I mean, where was he going to play? De'Ami Brown was going to play over him. Travis Hunter is going to play over him. Brian Thomas Jr. is going to play over him. So at this point, it does just make sense.
Yeah, and if they designate him a post-June 1st cut, which we don't know, but if they do, they won't take any cap hit this year. I don't know, though, what's the better option because what do you do? You got $27 million in cap space. You don't need that to function during the season. Even you know, when you go out and you sign a guy because he's a street free agent. That's usually NFL veteran minimum kind of deal. So they don't have to have that space. It'll be interesting to see how they utilize it, but it will forever be a mystery. And we were saying earlier, if Joshua Palmer had not signed with the Bills this offseason, I would bet you a nickel that he'd be right back in Buffalo by this afternoon.
Yeah.
I mean, in Buffalo, he averaged between 15.7 and 17.4 yards a catch every year for 4 years and scored 27 touchdowns in that time period. Had a 98 league's longest touchdown in 2022. 98 yards. You can't be slow and have a 98-yard touchdown.
No, you really can't. So it's not like this guy was just, a terrible wide receiver from the onset. When they signed him, a lot of people were excited. I thought that, they could get more downfield with him. I didn't view him maybe in the same vein as everyone else did, or maybe not everybody else, but just some people viewed him more as a field stretcher, somebody who's fast, who can get down the field. To me, he is a guy who can get down the field, but he's more of a big body guy who's out muscling players or who can improvise very well. Because one thing that he did with Buffalo was him and Josh Allen had some sort of telekinetic powers between each other, because every time it seemed like Josh was in trouble and scrambling, Gabe Davis is wide open for a touchdown or something. And I think that was proven in that playoff game where he had, I think, 3 or 4 touchdowns. But yeah, it just didn't work out the same way here in Jacksonville. I just don't think he fit.
How necessary do you think that kind of player is in an NFL offense, right? To have the rebounder, that kind of player in your pass game. And if it's not going to be Gabe Davis, and that's obviously not going to be Gabe Davis for the Jaguars this year, who would fit that bill?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. You have to have a safety valve. The Jaguars have had that over the past couple years with obviously Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram for Trevor Lawrence, especially Ingram in the 2023 season where he had 114 catches. I know a lot of that was sort of manufactured and just by default, but it is something to say, when you have a tight end or a player that can get out, get open, get that 5 yards and sort of call it a day. I do think that Brenton Strange is a guy that they've talked about a lot, and he's somebody that will probably operate in that area where he's going to be the underneath guy who probably isn't going to catch a lot of downfield passes, but he's going to catch that stuff underneath that will allow Trevor to sort of be bailed out. And then obviously with the running backs, they're going to have to use them a lot more.
Presuming they keep at least 5, do you have a favorite for that 5th spot now? Joshua Cephas, Austin Trammell, Luis Reese-Zammit, right? Their international guy. Chandler Brayboy, who, I mean, they've got some names on here. Obviously, some of them are undrafted free agents, but Cephas and Trammell would seem to be the two most intriguing right off the rip.
Yeah, I mean, those are the guys who have been in the NFL and have done things. Trammell, actually, I believe, and I might be wrong, I think he played for the Rams for a certain period of time.
Good question.
And that might have coincided. Yes. Okay, then that might have coincided with Liam Cohen. I don't know, but at that point, in my opinion, it's going to come down to special teams. You're going to be looking for a guy who's going to be able to return kicks. I know De'Ami Brown can do some of that, but if you want to use him more on offense, maybe you go a different direction. So right now it's fully open. I don't know anything too much about these undrafted free agent wide receivers. We're going to see more about them this weekend. And then we'll just move from there. But yeah, that 5th wide receiver spot is going to be interesting to look at, and it'll probably come down to special teams.
Yeah, he was in with the Rams. I got the thumbs up from Dylan. This is how much trust I put in young Dylan. He just gave me a thumbs up. I'm like, yep, absolutely, play for the Rams.
It must be true.
He was right.
I do love where the 5th, 6th wide receiver spot on an NFL roster. They got to play special teams.
Yeah,
and they got to play more than one special teams in general. They got to be a special teams player, kind of thing. That doesn't make the fan base any less frustrated for the last 4 years when we all talked about Tim Jones and what he offered the team on. It's like I can almost feel the fan base when we have these conversations cringe, right? Like, oh, special teams guy. Like, it's hard to push that kind of thing.
I understand that angst, and I'll say this about Tim Jones. Obviously he's a really good special teams player, but the downside, the big downside with him was whenever he was on the field, they were running the football. I mean, there was almost no time, besides the time when, the Jaguars lost all their receivers in one game and he had to play. Almost every single time that Tim was on the field, they were running the football because he's a good blocker and they didn't care, I guess, for the tell. So that was something where I do think that this new regime wouldn't just necessarily have a player who's only special teams. He needs to be able to, just in case. I mean, you might lose De'Ami Brown, you might lose Brian Thomas in a game, and now, you do have to rely on Tim Jones or a player like Tim Jones.
You made an interesting point because, the NFL news of the morning still, I hate to break it to you, it's still George Pickens being traded from Pittsburgh to Dallas. Yeah, I think it is. But you made the point that, with the timing of it, they could have done this move immediately after the draft if they wanted to. They knew what their evaluation was. Once they got their undrafted free agent class in, maybe they were trying to move him. I don't know. Like, I haven't looked in because we weren't anticipating it. I haven't looked into the salary cap ramifications of the team taking him on or whatever the case may be.
Hey, Mia here, and thanks so much for watching 1010XL Jaguars. For even more coverage of the Big Cats, be sure to subscribe to 1010XL Jaguars.